A lot of people enjoy traveling solo without worrying that something bad could happen. The main perks are the total freedom to do whatever you want, the ability to quickly adjust plans, and the rare chance to spend time alone with your own thoughts and feelings. However, alongside these benefits, there are also plenty of risks, especially for women who decide to take solo trips. The tragic story of Maria Luisa Cedeno, which happened in 2020 in Costa Rica, shocked the entire country and later made headlines internationally. The case drew widespread attention because it occurred at an expensive hotel in a popular resort area, and the victim was a well-known doctor who headed the anesthesiology department at one of the country's largest medical centers. Who was Maria Luisa Cedeno? Maria Luisa Cedeno was born on May 29, 1977, in La Fortuna, San Carlos, in the province of Alajuela, Costa Rica. She was the youngest of 5 children in a modest family. Her relatives were all simple workers with no education beyond what they got in school. From a young age, Maria Luisa was ambitious and very determined. She wanted to help others and dreamed of becoming a doctor, promising herself she'd be the first in her family to get a college degree. In school, her favorite subjects were chemistry and biology, and after graduating in 1994, she was accepted into medical school at the most prestigious university in the country, located in San Jose. As a student, Maria Luisa moved to the capital and stayed there for the rest of her life, though she kept close ties with her family, regularly visiting and staying in touch with them. In 2000, after completing her degree, she started working as an anesthesiologist at one of the largest medical centers in the capital. She quickly advanced in her career, constantly learning and improving her skills. By 2015, Cedeno had become the head of the anesthesiology and recovery therapy department. She was loved and respected by her colleagues and became quite a prominent doctor. Though she achieved all this by sacrificing her personal life, for a long time, Maria Luisa was alone and completely devoted to her work. In 2017, when she was 40, she started a romantic relationship with a doctor from the same hospital, although he worked in a different department. She believed he was the love of her life, someone she could build a strong and happy family with. However, at the beginning of 2020, the couple broke up because he started seeing a younger colleague. For Maria Luisa, the breakup was a devastating blow. She fell into a deep depression and buried herself in work for months, barely noticing anything around her. Her only comfort was her little dog, Mitty, who she treated like her child. The last vacation. In July 2020, Maria Luisa decided she desperately needed a break and a change of scenery before she lost her mind. At the time, the COVID-19 pandemic was spreading worldwide, and various restrictions were in place to slow the virus. She chose to head to the coast and stay at a small but cozy hotel called La Mansion Inn, located in the scenic Puntarenas. This resort is usually popular with tourists from all over the world, but with the pandemic and strict lockdowns, it was almost deserted. At the hotel where she checked in, only a few rooms were occupied. However, the peace and quiet were exactly what she was looking for. The weekend. Maria Luisa planned to spend the weekend there and head home on Monday. She brought along her beloved dog, Mofty. She stayed in a ground-floor room that had a second door leading to a private courtyard. These rooms were designed for travelers with pets so that the animals could go outside and take care of their business in a designated area. All the other rooms with courtyard access were empty at the time. On July 18, Maria Luisa checked in, dropped off her things, and headed to the beach. The next day passed just as quietly. She strolled along the shore, sunbathed, had dinner at the restaurant, and then went back to her room. She called her mother, and they talked for about half an hour. Maria Luisa mentioned how empty the hotel was, with only a few staff members, most of whom were juggling multiple jobs. She planned to check out the next morning after breakfast, but she never made it that far. A lifeless body. On the morning of July 20th, Maria Luisa didn't show up for breakfast. The hotel staff noticed this because there were so few guests, but they didn't think much of it, assuming she was just sleeping in before heading home. But when checkout time came, and she still hadn't appeared, they decided to check her room. 2 staff members knocked on Maria Luisa's door, but there was no answer. They could hear her dog barking inside, so they knew she had to be there. They kept knocking and calling her name, but the only response was the barking. So, they went around to the courtyard to see if they could reach her that way. The second door was unlocked, and the staff decided to enter to make sure everything was okay. As soon as they stepped inside, they noticed brownish stains on the floor that looked like dried blood, and on the bed, they found a body wrapped in a sheet. The hotel staff immediately called emergency services and informed the management. Unfortunately, the paramedics could only confirm that Maria Luisa was dead. She had been killed several hours before her body was found. Everything about the scene was strange, from the condition of the room to the circumstances of her death. The investigation begins. Maria Luisa's body showed multiple cuts, bruises, and bite marks left by different people. Defensive wounds on her hands indicated that she had fought back fiercely. The cause of death was mechanical asphyxia and a broken neck. Someone had strangled her so hard that they broke her cervical vertebrae. The autopsy also revealed that she had been sexually assaulted before she died. Next to her bed, there was a bottle of mineral water, an open bottle of expensive wine, and 2 glasses. According to the maid, Maria Luisa had indeed ordered these items the night before, but she had been alone. The records of her key card showed that after receiving her delivery, she didn't leave the room, and no one entered. However, the glass door to the courtyard didn't require a key, so the attacker could have gotten in that way. The hotel had plenty of security cameras, which might have shed some light on what happened, but it turned out none of them had been working for months. The administration claimed that due to the pandemic and the drop in guests, they had cut costs by shutting off the cameras. Forensic results. Forensic experts tested the bite marks on Maria Luisa's body for DNA, hoping to find the killer's saliva, but the results were shocking. The saliva found in the wounds was her own. Because the bite marks were on her face, neck, and chest, where she could not physically reach, investigators concluded that the perpetrator intentionally stained the wounds with her saliva to cover his tracks. Another surprising detail came from the pathologist, who reported that her body had been thoroughly washed after death. This meant that after she was attacked, tortured, and strangled, the perpetrator or perpetrators took her body to the bathroom, washed her, then laid her on the bed, stained the bite marks with her saliva, and wrapped her in a sheet. Since the hotel's cameras weren't working and the place was almost empty due to the pandemic, no witnesses were found. None of the guests or staff reported seeing or hearing anything unusual, and no strangers were spotted on the property. The first suspect. News of the brutal murder of a well-known anesthesiologist quickly spread across the country, causing a huge public outcry. The police needed to solve the case as soon as possible and figure out who could have been so cruel to an innocent woman. When the victim's family was asked if Maria Luisa could have had a brief vacation fling, they were sure the answer was no. She was still heartbroken over her recent breakup and hoping for reconciliation. As for the 2 glasses found in the room, Maria Luisa's sister explained that she always used 2, one for wine and one for water. The forensic results confirmed this, as only the victim's fingerprints and lip marks were found on the glasses. During an interview with the police, Maria Luisa's mother suddenly recalled that, in her last phone call, Maria had mentioned a man who worked at the hotel. He had chatted with her during lunch, asking why she was traveling alone and how long she planned to stay. This led detectives to their first suspect, 38-year-old Theodore Herrera Martinez, the son of a longtime friend of the hotel owner, Harry Bowden. Martinez had gotten the job thanks to his father's connections and worked as a bartender, also handling personal errands for his boss. From the start of his interview, Martinez acted nervous, claiming he didn't remember Maria Luisa or ever talking to her. Fresh scratches were visible on his cheeks and neck, but he couldn't clearly explain where they came from. When asked to remove his shirt, similar scratches were found on his chest and shoulders. Detectives suspected that the victim had left those marks while fighting for her life, but they needed confirmation from experts. Martinez was arrested and held for 6 months while the investigation continued. The second suspect. Forensics confirmed that blood and skin particles from Martinez were found under the victim's nails, but the bite marks on her body didn't match his dental impressions. The investigation pressed on, and soon another person came into focus, 36-year-old Luis Carlos Miranda, a friend of the hotel owner. Although Miranda wasn't a guest or an employee of the hotel, he often stayed there for free thanks to his connection with Bowden. One of the bite marks on Maria Luisa's body could have been made by Miranda, but the evidence wasn't clear enough for certainty. Still, the police arrested him as a second suspect, and like Martinez, he was held for 6 months. Miranda denied ever seeing Maria Luisa or having any contact with her. The third suspect. About a week and a half after the murder, a third suspect was arrested, Harry Bowden himself, the 69-year-old owner of the hotel. Bowden, a businessman of Dutch origin, had extensive connections with politicians and entrepreneurs and owned multiple properties in various countries. What led to his arrest was that one of the bite marks on the victim's body matched Bowden's dental impressions. It also came to light that 6 months before the murder, Bowden had undergone surgery at the hospital where Maria Luisa worked. Despite Bowden's insistence that he had never met her before, police suspected that he might have noticed her during his hospital stay, obtained her contact information, and lured her to his hotel. Initially, Bowden was placed under house arrest due to his age and health issues. However, when he changed his residence without notifying the police, they feared he might attempt to flee the country, so he was taken into custody. The fourth suspect. A fourth person was also briefly involved in the case, Bowden's young husband, Yadir Daniel Abanda. However, no evidence was found against him, and Abanda claimed that Bowden had not left their room on the night of the murder because he wasn't feeling well. The investigation theory. Once the autopsy and forensic results were in, investigators concluded that Maria Luisa had been attacked by 3 people. Although there were no signs of ropes or restraints used to immobilize her, all her limbs bore bruises from fingers and palms, indicating she was held down by hand. In Maria Luisa's mouth, experts found fabric fibers and a thread, suggesting that she had been gagged, which likely explained why no one heard her scream, even though the evidence of her torture indicated she must have desperately called for help. The prime suspect. Messages found on Maria Luisa's phone painted a different picture. In her texts to her sister, she praised the hotel, describing it as beautiful, cozy, and quiet. She noted how attentive and helpful the staff was and even mentioned spending the evening chatting and dancing at the bar with a man who served coffee and looked after the property. Based on her description, this man was Martinez, making him the prime suspect from the beginning. The trial. Theodore Herrera Martinez was the only one of the 3 suspects with visible scratches, and his blood and skin particles were found under Maria Luisa's fingernails. Forensic analysis also revealed his biological material in her body, despite his attempts to wash it away. However, his dental impressions did not match the bite marks found on her skin. Since Maria Luisa hadn't left her room after returning that evening and hadn't let anyone in, investigators believed the attackers entered her room through the door leading to the courtyard. She may have left it unlocked so her dog could go out. Since the neighboring rooms were empty, no one would have noticed the attackers. They likely moved quickly once inside, knocking her unconscious with a blow to the head, gagging her, and torturing her for several hours. When they were finished, they strangled her so violently with their bare hands that they broke her neck. Afterward, they washed her body in the bathroom, placed it on the bed, and wrapped it in a sheet, contaminating the bite marks with her own saliva. All 3 suspects denied any involvement in the crime, claiming they were asleep in their rooms that night. However, there were no witnesses to confirm their alibis, except for Harry Bowden's husband, whose testimony was questionable from the start. Strange text messages found on the suspects' phones revealed disturbing intimate fantasies. The day before the crime, they discussed a guest who was alone. The public trial didn't begin until September 2022, more than 2 years after the murder. At 71, Harry Bowden appeared in court in a wheelchair due to worsening knee problems. The prosecution faced challenges in proving Bowden's and Luis Carlos Miranda's involvement, as much of the evidence was circumstantial, text messages and dental impressions. The defense argued that the bite mark evidence should be dismissed, as the marks weren't a perfect match with their dental records. The prosecution had hired an expert to testify about the bite marks, but it was later revealed that this individual wasn't properly accredited and was merely a self-proclaimed expert. His testimony was dismissed, further weakening the prosecution's case. Despite this, the prosecution insisted that a crime this brutal couldn't have been committed by just one person, while the defense argued that a single strong man could have done it alone. The verdict. The only undeniable evidence was against Theodore Herrera Martinez. In addition to his biological material found inside the victim and skin particles under her nails, investigators discovered Maria Luisa's blood on both the outside and inside of his shoes, with the shoe prints matching those found at the threshold of her room and near the bed. As a result, Martinez was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 50 years in prison, without the possibility of parole. At 40 years old, this was effectively a life sentence. Martinez admitted to being intimate with Maria Luisa that night but claimed it was consensual, insisting that someone else must have killed her after he left. Since there was no solid evidence against Bowden and Miranda, aside from the bite marks and suspicious text messages, their involvement couldn't be proven. Both men were acquitted and released in March 2023. The aftermath. In September of that same year, an appeals court reviewed a complaint filed by Maria Luisa's family and ordered the case to be reopened. By that time, however, both Bowden and Miranda had fled Costa Rica, leaving for the Netherlands soon after their release. Even if the new trial finds them guilty, they won't face punishment, as there is no extradition agreement between the Netherlands and Costa Rica.